Isn't it interesting that when we have a tragedy or something difficult in our life, or we hear about it with someone else, how that instantly changes our perspective? Perspective creates meaning, meaning creates emotion, and the quality of our life is the quality of our emotions. We have a completely different life. Obviously, you take parts of you into your future, but there's a new and improved version every year. I'm remaking myself. So it's part of nature to be reborn and remade. But so many people lack the perspective in their life, and that lack of perspective causes them to not grow anymore. If you look back at your life, you've changed and grown quite a bit, haven't you? But what pace, at what percentage, how much, and to what perspective do you need to accelerate this? You really want to have a lot of change in your life? Get with a great coach and ask them quality questions. Get with people that have the information. You want to be that person who every year, that new birth date, that new time is replacing the former you, taking the best of the best from the previous person, fixing the things that aren't so good, and growing and improving into that new year. And I believe those are the key things to creating change in your life. Of all the things that's talked about in personal development, self-help, self-improvement, entrepreneurship, what about my perspective? How is my perspective impacting my thoughts? How are those thoughts impacting my behavior, the decisions I make, the emotions I have? And if I can shift my perspective, I can tell you that I think you can shift your life. Shift your perspective and shift your life and reconnect with your center. And I think you're going to find a formula and a recipe that may have change come find you, as opposed to you having to always go chase change. You can actually become somebody where change helps find you, where you magnetize and gravitate to yourself because of this incredible perspective you've had. So hey guys, are you frustrated with where you're at right now? Maybe stunted in your progress? Well, if you are, I want to recommend a place for you to go called Growth Day. growthday.com/ed. It is the #1 personal development app on the planet. It's got all kinds of high performance techniques in there, courses, accountability, journaling, live speeches from some of the top influencers in the world, including me. It's an overall environment to change your life. growthday.com/ed. Welcome back to the show, everybody. It's such a blessing to be with you this week. I'm going to give you 3 keys today to, I think, just shifting perspective. Today's podcast is really about your perspective on life and how you see things. It's such a critical thing in life. And isn't it interesting that when we have a tragedy or something difficult in our life, or we hear about it with someone else, how that instantly changes our perspective for a little bit. For a little bit. You ever have that? If there's a passing of somebody that you love or in your family, it makes you reevaluate and recalibrate life and what really matters to you. But doesn't it seem like that's fleeting and it's just for a while, and then you find yourself 6 months, a year later, back to thinking and doing exactly what you did before? And so that happens with me as well. And so I saw this quick video this week that these are not my words, but they made an impact on me. And I wanted to share the words in this video with you because they were so compelling for me. And I think it'll be a gift for you as well. And then I would give you some takeaways that I took from these words. So here we go. I asked God, "Why are you taking me through troubled waters?" He replied, "Because your enemies can't swim." I asked, "Why do I always feel like I'm failing and struggling?" He answered, "Because your growth and accomplishments come from facing challenges and overcoming difficulties. Every failure is a stepping stone to success." I asked God again, "Why do I sometimes feel like life is filled with pain and helplessness?" He responded, "Because in your weakest moments, I am by your side. I use your pain to shape your character and your helplessness to showcase my power." Continuing, I inquired, "Why do I have to experience disappointment and setbacks?" He replied, "Because in disappointment, you learn to trust. In setbacks, you learn to persevere. I am with you every step of the way, guiding you towards victory." Finally, I asked, "Why do I always feel confused and lost?" He answered, "Because you overlook my plan for your life. When you focus on me, I will smooth your path and provide you with clear direction. Trust me, everything is within my control." This had a big impact on me, a profound impact, because I think oftentimes we do wonder why certain things happen in our life. And I think perspective is everything. When I talk to people that are a little bit older than me, I'm always blown away by the perspective that they have. I recall when Max was about 6 years old, every weekend on Saturdays, I would take Max down to the car wash and we would get my car washed. And it was back in the days where there really wasn't a lot of internet at the time. So there was a man there that we would see every Saturday, an older man, and he was reading his newspaper. And I think he sat there for hours, frankly. I always wonder, like, this guy's car took a long time to get washed. I think he would just come down there and read his paper, and maybe his car was being detailed, or he just let them work on it while he sat there. And so we'd always say hello, and he was a nice man. But I could tell that he wasn't happy. I could tell there was something unsettled in his spirit. And I watched him several times. This looks sad to me. And I took notice of it. You ever just feel someone's energy? And I remember several times seeing this man, feeling some kind of sympathy for him. And I'll never forget this, because one Sunday he goes, "So how old is Max?" And I said, "He's 6 years old." And he gave me great advice. He said, "Well, enjoy the 6-year-old, because when he turns 7, that 6-year-old's gone forever." And if you're a parent, you know that's true. That 6-year-old really does go away, and there's a brand new person at 7. And he goes, "In fact, enjoy the 7-year-old, because once he turns 8, that 7-year-old's gone forever. They become a whole new person and remake themselves. And you know what? And enjoy him when he's 16, because when he turns 17, that 16-year-old teenager is a completely different person. They keep changing and growing." And I didn't even mean it in a mean way. But I remember I turned to him and I said, "Sir, when did that process stop for you?" And he put the paper down. He said, "Again?" I said, "When did you stop remaking yourself every year?" And he sat back and he went, "I don't know. I guess maybe in my early mid-20s. I said, "You should evaluate that." I said, "One of the things I'm most obsessed with in my life is that the 33-year-old me will be gone forever when I turn 34, replaced with a whole new, better, growing version of me. And I hope someday when I'm 40, that when I turn 41, the 40-year-old's gone forever, just like the 6-year-old Eddie Mylett. There was a new version of him, an improved." Now, obviously, you take parts of you into your future, but there's a new and improved version every year. I'm remaking myself. You can look into your body, your lung tissue, your digestive tract, even your bones are remaking themselves on a very regular basis. It's part of nature to be reborn and remade. But so many people lack the perspective in their life, and that lack of perspective causes them to not grow anymore. There's this great quote that I used to throw around all the time that said, "Most men die in their early 20s. We just don't get around to burying them until they're in their 70s. Too many people right now are not remaking themselves and wondering why they're not happy. This requires growth. This requires perspective. And I think that quote that I read you earlier about God, whatever your version of God is in your life, however you look at that, everyone knows how I look at it, but however you look at that it changes your perspective, and that the things that happen in your life take on a different meaning. See, everything in life is, what does something mean to us? If you can change the meaning of something, you can change everything in your life. But once we stop growing and changing, it all starts to feed the same meaning. You ever say, "Well, you keep telling the same story to yourself." That's a big thing in personal. Change your story, and you should change your story. But in order to change the story, you have to change what you believe things mean. And so that's why the questions that person was asking, that God was answering, changes the meaning of when things happen. So I'm a big believer that you are supposed to be replacing yourself. So if you're 28 years old and you're listening to this today, one of your ambitions ought to be to take all the great things with you into your 29th year, but to grow and improve so that a 28-year-old's gone forever and there's a new, better version of you at 29. If you're 40 years old listening to this today, that by the time you're growing all year long, that by the time you turn 41, that 40-year-old's gone forever, just like the 6-year-old you was gone forever when you turned 7. Just like when you turned 8, the 7-year-old was gone forever. And just like when the 16-year-old turned 17, the 16-year-old was gone forever. If you look back at your life, you've changed and grown quite a bit, haven't you? But at what pace? At what percentage? How much? Right? And to what perspective do you need to accelerate this? So as you guys know, about 2 years ago, I started on this journey to learning Spanish, and I've gotten pretty good. I was just on a trip to Mexico and got quite a few compliments on my Spanish game. And the reason I've got pretty good is Babbel. So for you in 2024, maybe getting a little bit better every day would be great for you, especially at learning a second language or a third or fourth or fifth. When you're learning a new language with Babbel, it's exactly what you're doing. You're getting better. They can help you start speaking a new language in like 3 weeks. Imagine what you could do in a year with Babbel. Dive into these lessons. They're crafted by over 200 language experts. They're 10 minutes long. They're easy. So whether you're learning Spanish or French or any of Babbel's 14 languages, you'll be ready for a real-world conversation in no time. So don't let this chance slip by. Here's a special limited-time deal for our listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/Mylett. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/Mylett, spelled BABBEL.com/Mylett. Rules and restrictions may apply. Please visit babbel.com for details. And so I believe very deeply in life that the meaning we take away from experiences changes everything. And how do you change your meaning? So I'm going to give you 3 keys today to shifting perspective. Number 1, with that quote I gave you in the beginning illustrates. Number 1 is ask a better question, have a better life. The quality of your life is really comprised of the quality of the questions you ask yourself, because the quality of the questions creates the quality of your thoughts. Quality of your thoughts defines the meaning. And so if you can begin to ask better questions in life, you can have a better life. But what you're doing right now, the reason you're not growing if you're not, or you're not growing at the rate you could, is because you're not looking to ask a better question. See, the powerful thought of that whole thing I read to you is that it was powerful questions with better answers. So it was a pretty average question with an extraordinary answer from God. And when you begin to ask the right questions, I believe you begin to get the right answers. Your life is really a pattern of regular questions you're asking yourself. All this data that tells us 80 to 90% of our thoughts are the same every day, and that most of them are negative. Why? Because 80 to 90% of the questions you ask yourself are just autopilot. Why am I this way? Why aren't I happier? Why aren't I more successful? What are they thinking about me? What are they going to think? What are people going to say? You have the same questions all the time you're asking yourself, and so your perspective doesn't change. That's why I love talking to people that are at later stages in life, because you just see a peace about them and a wisdom about them that's come with time because they've had more perspective change in their life. That's why I think listening to podcasts, and hopefully mine at the top of the list, reading books and talking to people that are successful or happy can give you perspective. You want to do something that's unbelievably productive in your life? Go spend an afternoon at a retirement home or a nursing home and talk to those folks about their perspective on life. You really want to have a lot of change in your life? Get with a great coach and ask them quality questions. Get with people that have the information. And the person with the most information wins. And by the way, for me, the source with the most information, that's why I read this to you, is God. And so when I pray, I ask questions. And I find the higher caliber, higher quality, better, newer question, I elicit a better answer. So number 1 is ask a better question, have a better life. Number 2, shift your perspective and you shift your life. I have this great story that I was once told, and it's not my story, but Mother Teresa, I'll give you 2 of them. For most of us, if we were with someone who passed away, or we saw a car accident, let's say, and we rushed to the scene of that accident and we had someone in our arms that passed away, you and I would probably, our perspective would be, my gosh, I just witnessed a tragedy in my life. And that's okay. That's reasonable conclusion that you had witnessed this tragedy. I think it was Tony Robbins that told me this story. And he said, actually, Mother Teresa said that the greatest honor of her life was to be present with a person when their soul leaves their body and goes to heaven. So can you imagine the exact same event? You and I would sit there and say, this is tragic, this is horrible. Mother Teresa would say, this was the greatest honor of her life to be there, to watch this soul leave its body and go to heaven. Same exact event, different perspective, different meaning, different emotion, different quality of life. You following me? Perspective creates meaning, meaning creates emotion, and the quality of our life is the quality of our emotions. We have a completely different life. Mother Teresa, in an event like that, is such an unbelievable, it's an extreme example, but it's illustrative of everything is perspective and meaning. It's not the events of our life that define us. It's the meaning we take from these events. Let me say that to you again. It's not the events of our life that define us. It's the meaning we take away from those events. If you want to change your life, you can go back and begin to look at what meanings you've taken. Ask yourself, what would I need to believe about that event so that it would serve me? Not what do I believe? What would I need to believe so that it would serve me? I could have, there's all this data about children that grow up in alcoholic households. It's fascinating. Usually they're one way or the other. Either become extremely successful achievers or they repeat the patterns of their parent. Why is it that two children can go up in the exact same house with the exact same parents and have two totally different lives? Most of you are nodding probably when I say this. You're thinking of even your own family or somebody you know. Same two parents, same environment, same house, same upbringing, same information, two totally different lives. Why is that? Perspective and meaning. One person took away a different meaning from the exact same events, and the other one took away meanings that didn't serve them, made them shrink, made them negative, made them bitter, made them lose their confidence, and the other person didn't. What I learned from watching those events happen in my life is I learned what I didn't want to do. I learned when my dad got sober that people can change their life. I took those meanings away. So everything in your life is the meaning you take away from the event. And by the way, the meaning you attach to your work. There's this great story I'll tell you secondly. I believe it was JFK, and he was visiting Cape Canaveral. And he's walking through Cape Canaveral. This is back in the days where they're going to launch and go into space and attempt to go to the moon, as I understand the story at the time. And he walks by this man who's got a mop and a bucket. And he stops and asks this man and says, "What is it that you're doing here?" Now, what would have been reasonable for that man to say? "Oh, sir, I'm cleaning the floor. I'm making this place spotless, et cetera, et cetera." Do you know what this man replied to him? The man with the mop and the bucket? President Kennedy says to him, "So what are you doing here?" And this man says, "I'm helping put a man on the moon, sir. I'm helping put a man on the moon." He had a completely different perspective about his work. He took a different meaning away from his work than what the average and ordinary person would do. It's not even what we do. It's the meaning we take from it. And then the third thing that I would recommend to you is to learn to reconnect with your center, to get centered in your life. I'm talking about this a lot more. And so to do things that give you perspective is to reconnect with center. We lose perspective when there's chaos around us. We lose perspective when we're just repeating the same thoughts and the same questions and the same emotions over and over again. So in order to change that, one, you got to ask a better question. Two, you've got to shift your perspective and your meaning. And third is reconnect to your center. So what are the things you could be doing to reconnect to your center? For me, my center is my faith. And so I focus on my prayer life. In fact, I'm reading a prayer right now. I probably will just pull it up on my phone. I wasn't going to do this, but I'm reading a prayer currently that I think I should share with you guys. So here we go. Father, here I am before your throne with a heavy heart and an anxious mind. Come, Lord, and fill me with your holy presence. Let me rest and be at peace. Let me feel your protection. Let me feel as if I'm under the shadow of your wings, safe, hidden, and secure in you. Only you can give it and take it all. I pray, Father, please take my fear away and give me your peace that surpasses all understanding. You know that my life is in your hands. My trust and my hope is on you alone, Father. Thank you in the name of Jesus, amen. It's just a prayer I've been reading myself. I give myself different prayers from time to time that just change my perspective. So for me, by the way, whatever your faith is, I also meditate. I love vibrational frequency. I love to center myself. And so whatever your practices are, get back to those practices. Care for your body a little bit more. For me, I've learned that my center almost always has to do with my faith and my body. That when I'm connected to my body, this, what we would consider to be a temple, when I care for it a little bit better. So these things may seem very simple to you, but reconnect. If you're meditating, really refocus on it. If you've got prayer life, really refocus on it. For me, it's strange, but the more I do little things where I'm connected to my body, cold plunging, sauna. Here's a random one for you lately. I just love to stretch. Just stretching and some yoga has really helped me reconnect to my center. Something I've never done before. I'm a bigger guy. I always thought I'll get around to stretching. I'll get around to yoga. Well, this year, last 12 months, I've made it a pretty big priority. It helps me reconnect. It's just I'm present with my body. I also love to do earthing and grounding where I walk around with my bare feet on the earth. I try to get in the grass or on the beach if I can and just reconnect to that. For some reason, that helps me connect with my center. And then lastly, just one of my formulas is I love to be around water. And so when I had an apartment and couldn't live near the ocean, I always had like a fountain in my house where I could hear running water. Something, some of you may relate to this, just somehow being around running water centers me, calms me, whether it's a lake or an ocean, even a pool, a fountain, something that is water centered for me helps me reconnect to my center. And those are just part of my formulas. I think it's to know oneself, right? And so I love to work out and lift heavy and all that stuff. But boy, I'll really tell you something. I found out stretching and yoga, my prayer life, my meditation, my earthing and grounding. These are not things that 5 or 8 years ago you probably would have heard me talk a lot about, but they've helped me change my perspective. And so what today was all about was sharing with you a perspective shift on life and getting you to consider, is one of the things I need to do of all the things that's talked about in personal development, self-help, self-improvement, entrepreneurship, what about my perspective? How is my perspective impacting my thoughts? How are those thoughts impacting my behavior, the decisions I make, the emotions I have? And if I can shift my perspective, I can tell you that I think you can shift your life. And so go back in the beginning of this video or audio and listen to that exchange that this person has with God, that you could have with your God. And then ask yourself a better question. Shift your perspective and shift your life and reconnect with your center. And I think you're going to find a formula and a recipe that may have change come find you, as opposed to you having to always go chase change. You can actually become somebody where change helps find you, where you magnetize and gravitate to yourself because of this incredible perspective you've had. And the last thing I want for you is to be a man or woman who in their 20s or 30s really dies, but doesn't get buried until they're in their 70s, 80s, 90s, or beyond. That's not what you want to be. You want to be that person who every year, that new birth date, that new time is replacing the former you, taking the best of the best from the previous person, fixing the things that aren't so good, and growing and improving into that new year, just like the 6-year-old did, just like the 7-year-old did, just like the 16-year-old did. So should the 40-year-old. So should the 25-year-old. So should the 65-year-old. And I believe those are the key things to creating change in your life. All right. I hope today helped you, everybody. It certainly helped me. Made me really rethink stuff as I prepared for this today. And I hope it made an impact and a difference for you. That's why I do it. I just want to make a difference in your life. And if I have, please share this with someone else's precious soul that you think it could impact their life. God bless you, everybody. Max out.